Well, hello, everybody. This is Manny Aragon from the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, and welcome back to the 2014 Endurance Summit. Today, we've got another really neat and interesting episode. For some of you, this is going to be something you've heard about before. For others, this is going to be kind of a new treat to discover, and I've got a great guest on today, Dan Slipkowsky of Polar Cryotherapy. And polar cryotherapy is, and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, Dan, so you'll have to correct me if I get it wrong, but he's really, Dan's really a pioneer in the implementation and bringing cryotherapy to the public and the public use. I think it's been in use abroad in other countries for a number of years under various different research and also possibly medical protocols. But in the U.S., it's kind of a new thing. And so, Dan's an athlete like most of us, and he kind of discovered this, I guess, fairly recently and has brought it out for public use. So we're going to talk a little bit about today, a little bit about what it is, why, what's the whole point of it, and what it's good for, and some of the success stories maybe of what Dan's seeing and using this. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us today, Dan. I appreciate you taking the time to help us out.
Great, thanks, Manny. Glad to be here.
So yeah, totally cool. I love finding out about new things and sharing them with people because cryotherapy is, I've read a lot and kind of experienced a lot about using ice baths and cold and things like that in terms of post-exercise recovery and knocking inflammation down. But it seems like cryotherapy takes that to a whole nother level. Can you talk a little bit about like what the logistics are of cryotherapy, like how it works and how you came upon finding it and getting into it?
Yeah, so first we should talk about the origin of whole body cryotherapy, because although it's new in the United States, it was invented in the late 70s in Japan by a Japanese rheumatologist. And he was experimenting with cold therapy. So he was experimenting with cold water, with ice on his rheumatoid arthritis patients. And then he started experimenting with very cold air. And what he found was that the results of using very cold air were much more effective. And so he was sort of the first, he was the pioneer. And what he found was using very cold air in a very short period of time as almost a topical treatment was getting the best results as far as reducing pain and inflammation in his patients. So that's sort of where it came from. It has origins as far as being studied with ice and water, but it was found to be much more effective. And then from there, it really migrated to Europe, and mostly in the Eastern European countries. Like it's been studied pretty heavily in Germany, Russia, Ukraine, Poland. It's also been studied in France, Italy, in Western Europe as well. But that's where it's really, over the last 25 years, it's been heavily studied, and really it's been refined and refined over and over again until it got to the point where it's at now. And then about 3 years ago, it came to the United States, which is actually sort of helpful because it's been studied and refined to a point that it came as basically as a delivered treatment, ready to go in the United States.
That's funny because, we talk so much about us being innovative and on the cutting edge, and at the same time, in terms of medical type of treatments, the U.S. seems to be, and actually for car aficionados, for sports cars as well, the U.S. seems to be kind of on like the trailing end. We get things after everybody else, but I guess that's a good thing in the sense that things have been refined and stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
So actually, you know what? You're talking a bit about the cold environment as opposed to, say, the cold liquid being in a cold air or a cold nitrogen in this case, being superior to cold liquid. And I wonder, something that I've been studying recently a bit is the challenge of many people have with peripheral circulation and maintaining, proper peripheral circulation throughout the body. And it seems to me that like the really cold liquids, like when you're submersing yourself in an ice bath, there definitely are hormonal benefits and all kinds of stuff to that. But it does definitely shunts the blood to your core. But I don't know that that's, but then you're sitting in those baths for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, whereas cryotherapy, you're what, like 3 minutes maybe, max, 4
Right.
minutes, something? So I wonder, like my experience at least has been that it actually stimulates the peripheral circulation rather than shunts the blood to the core. Is that kind of right, or what's been your experience of that?
Yeah. So first of all, people that don't like cold or wouldn't like cold baths, which I would say is the majority of the population, they'd be very hesitant to do an ice bath just because they're painful. They can be sort of long. They're not real friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really what I found is sort of hardcore athletes that pride themselves on being real tough, go in it and suffer. And but there is debate in the medical world and in the PT world as far as how effective cold baths actually are. They certainly will chill the nerves, so they'll reduce pain. But anytime you chill something and go in case of ice water and ice baths, you're chilling the tissue and chilling into the tissue and muscle. You're really slowing down metabolic processes. Cold usually slows things down.
Mm-hmm.
So there is debate about as far as how effective ice baths are. With that said, some people like it, some people don't. But cryotherapy is really completely different than an ice bath, because what we're using is our vehicle is extremely cold air. Of course it's dry. It's dry air, and that cold never penetrates past the skin. So it never the cold actually never penetrates into the tissue or muscles. So it doesn't slow down circulation or metabolic processes of tissue repair. So I can talk a little bit about how cryotherapy works. And basically, like I said, it's very cold but very brief. So what happens is a person stands in a device. It's about the size of a refrigerator, up to their shoulders. Their head's outside, so they're breathing normal room temperature air. And the air around their body, and they wear as little clothing as possible, so mostly just socks, gloves, underwear. So you want as much skin exposure as possible. So we circulate very cold air down to about minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit around their body for less than 3 minutes. And that sounds real extreme, but actually it's tolerable because it's not wet and it's not penetrating. It's simply touching the skin surface. And so what this Japanese rheumatologist found was that the key to reducing inflammation and reducing pain was just to stimulate the skin sensors, the cold thermoreceptors in the skin, to get them alert that there's cold around them. And so those thermal sensors in your skin, they feel this minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and they go on high alert. And they report through the nervous system to the brain that the body is in a very unusual environment that could be a jeopardy type of situation for the body. So that's what creates a very powerful response, and it's a very powerful healing response from the overall body. So what happens physically is that the first thing is the body says, okay, let's send as much blood to the core to protect the organs and keep the organs warm. So you get what's called vasoconstriction, peripheral constriction of the blood vessels as the body sends more blood to the core to protect the organs. So that's actually very good for eliminating metabolic waste in the muscles, lactic acid, because you're getting a constriction. And you can actually, some people that do cryotherapy, they'll tell me, I feel my skin tightening right now, because it does. It's, you got blood vessels just squeezing and sending more blood to the core. And then sort of the key is that because the body thinks that it's in jeopardy by this cold, you get this release of chemicals. So these are natural chemicals. You know, your body has an amazing ability to heal itself, and so this is just inducing that process. So the body says, let's just dump these chemicals. There's proteins, hormones, enzymes that are great for reducing pain, reducing inflammation. The body's going in sort of like a hyper healing mode, where it's saying, if this environment has the potential to kill me, I'm going to go out trying to fight as hard as I can. So, and as we get older, we don't release these chemicals as easily as we do when we're younger. So it's very helpful to induce the body to release these chemicals into the bloodstream. And then, so that happens, and then after 2.5, 3 minutes, you step out of the big refrigerator, cryosauna, and your skin feels normal room temperature, so all those blood vessels in your peripherals dilate, and the blood rushes back to your peripherals. So, if you think about the difference between ice baths and whole body cryotherapy, you know, ice baths, water is penetrating, or the cold is penetrating past your skin into your tissues and muscles, making you sort of stiff, and actually, you know, ultimately sort of chilling your core temperature. Whole body cryotherapy, the cold is only touching the skin. It's increasing circulation, so you're actually, you know, with the constriction and then the dilation of blood vessels, you're getting more blood circulation. So it ends up being sort of a warming type of treatment for your muscles. So you can do cryotherapy right before a workout or an event, because you're not chilling the muscles. You can't do an ice bath before a race or a workout. So those are some of the key differences.
Yeah, and you brought up so many things came up while you were talking about that I want to maybe point out a couple of them and then ask you some more questions. Okay. But one of them that came out for me is, you know, for those of you who don't know, you know, I work in a holistic wellness center, so we're seeing all kinds of different disease states, and you know, primarily I work with athletes, but within the center we see a lot of inflammatory disease states. And one of the things that jumped out at me when you were talking about the constriction and moving of toxins and lactic acid and things like that is the potential for use of whole body cryotherapy within the context of like a detoxification program. In that constriction is a muscular constriction, which is then going to move your lymph. And the lymph is, you know, for those who aren't familiar with it, lymph is kind of like the backwater or the cesspool of your immune system. So any kind of good detoxification program is going to involve moving lymph. And traditionally we would have looked at saunas and or things like lymphatic drainage, massage therapy. But, you know, cryotherapy, it seems to me, especially if the person is doing the detox for a more inflammatory state, to reduce that, it seems to me that that's almost like a more elegant solution in that, one, the time spent by the client is very brief. So you could reasonably consider coming in for multiple treatments, whereas if you're doing massage or you're doing sauna, you're sitting in there for an hour. You know, whole body cryotherapy, you're in and out in 15 minutes, right? Right. So that's something that jumped out at me. But a couple other things that jumped out is, you know, we talk about whole body cryotherapy as having a history, but so people are aware, it's not like there's a history of random use. There's a history of research, there's a history of study, and there's a history of use. So maybe you could talk a little bit about like how you discovered it, because I don't think you talked about how you discovered it. And
So you're right about research. There's probably about up to 100 research papers that have been written on cryotherapy. So there's a lot of research that's been done. Again, most of it's been done in Europe. So I first discovered this treatment through Runner's World. So, you know, as a runner and as a triathlete, I'm always investigating, you know, what are the best training tips and, you know, how to recover. And I saw this video on Runner's World, and it was Alberto Salazar. And Alberto Salazar, he was actually, I really focused on him because he was actually a childhood hero of mine. He was one of the first U.S. distance runners that sort of made running cool, along with like Bill Rogers. And Alberto now runs the Nike program for elite distance runners in Oregon. It's called the Oregon Project. So about, I think it was 2010, this video came out, and it's Alberto in New York City with Dathan Ritzenheimer, one of his top runners, and they're using whole body cryotherapy right before the New York City Marathon. And so they're interviewing Alberto and about cryotherapy, and they say, Alberto, why do you use this? And he said, basically, this is the best device, best tool that I have to get my runners to recover faster. And so that really piqued my interest. I said, well, that's pretty cool. This is the top guy, pretty much a top coach, possibly in the world, but also in the U.S. for distance runners, and he's using cryotherapy. And Alberto's always been the guy that's sort of on the cutting edge of technology for his athletes. So I was interested. I researched it a little bit and found that there wasn't this treatment available in Orange County. It was in Southern California, but only in Los Angeles. So I went up to Los Angeles a few times and got to know the product and the treatment and the people sort of that have brought it to the U.S. And we chatted quite a bit, and I said, I'd like to bring this to Orange County in my area, my community of athletes, and make it available. Selfishly, so I could use it as well, but also, I wanted to be using it, so I'm like, well, I'll offer it to other athletes too. So that's pretty much how I got involved. And that also what sort of cement. I did a lot of. I vetted this treatment for a while. I tested it myself. I talked to a lot of people. So I didn't just jump into it. I really, because I'm a skeptic like everyone else, and I was like, well, I need to see this working, and pretty much everything I saw out there was very positive as far as results go. And one thing that's really sort of cemented it for me also was the Dallas Mavericks were one of the first professional teams to start using it, and the 2010-2011 season is when they started, and they won the championship that year. And at the end of the year, they did these post series interviews, and they were they're asking the players like, you guys are the oldest team in the NBA. How did you get through the playoffs? And they had Jason Terry and Jason Kidd. They're both sort of older guys, and they said we'd do cryotherapy. And so, and then after that, half the NBA is using it. So it was invented for chronic pain and arthritis in rheumatoid arthritis type patients, but athletes soon discovered that they recover a lot faster, so they jumped on the bandwagon. So that's basically sort of how I got involved.
Awesome. That's a great story. And so we kind of like peripherally talked about why people use it, but what have you found as an endurance athlete and also as a practitioner or watching people go through this process? What have you found has been the best use for say endurance athletes and stuff, and where's it worked really well for them?
Yeah. So I'll just say to start, about half my clients are athletes, and the other half use it for medical purposes. So just on the medical purpose side, it's people that just, anyone that's taking, if they're taking anti-inflammatories, medication, or they're taking painkillers habitually, and it's just part of their daily lives. They're taking those type of medicines. They're a good candidate to use whole body cryotherapy to help them potentially use less anti-inflammatory medications and painkillers, which can have negative side effects. So I do work with those. On the athletic side, I guess first question is, why would you want to use whole body cryotherapy? Then you have to ask yourself the question, why do I want to recover faster? Because that's basically what cryotherapy does. So for any athlete, doesn't matter if you're an endurance athlete or you're a CrossFitter or you're a golfer, why do you want to recover faster? Well, when you recover faster, you can train harder. So, especially endurance athletes, if we're working out 6 days a week and you work out hard Sunday, and you come into Monday, and you're like, oh, I'm sore, and this is not going to be my best effort today because I'm wiped and I'm sore, and my muscles haven't recovered. So now your training is suffering a little bit because you're not fully recovered. You can't give your full effort for that particular training, and that can become a cycle, and it can become a downward cycle where you end up really chronically fatigued. You can end up overtrained, and that's a big problem for most athletes. It doesn't matter if you're an endurance athlete or, like I said, or a weightlifter. Overtraining is a big problem, and a big part of overtraining is that you haven't recovered. You haven't given your body a chance to recover. And I mean, of course, the first things you look for recovery is, am I eating well? Am I hydrating? And am I getting enough sleep? I mean, those would be my first three probably. I want to make sure I'm doing. I'm not, my diet's good. I'm getting enough water, and I'm getting enough sleep. But then, how do you kickstart? I mean, those are the givens to just for basic recovery. But how do I kickstart my recovery so I'm getting stronger? I'm working out harder in my workouts, and then I'm coming to like a race day and I'm feeling 100%. And that's where cryotherapy comes in, is because it the numbers. I hate to throw exact numbers out there, but sort of the rule of thumb we're seeing is that cryotherapy is increasing recovery by about 50% than without it. So if it took you 2 days to recover from a particular workout, we're cutting that in half. So that's important. I mean, for a lot of athletes, they're just going into the real benefits is a lot of athletes going into tomorrow's training and they're just feeling like they have another gear. They're like, I feel 100%. I can push hard in this particular training. This run or bike or swim. So it's the more quality workout. So then it becomes a snowball effect where your workouts become better. You're not feeling fatigued and overtrained, and then you're going into race day feeling like Superman. So that's the reason why you want to focus on your recovery. And a lot of times, with athletes we don't, and then it comes and bites us because we've ignored the recovery process, and we become overtrained.
For sure, and just something that pops up from there is that in the recent past, and I hope this is kind of mostly behind us, there's still a kind of an allure for people who are really competitive to use any means necessary to be able to train harder. And so for a lot of people, that meant in the past using hormones and drugs and illegal substances, but actually whole body cryotherapy helps to stimulate the body's natural release of testosterone and growth hormone and those things. So for people who are, and I'm just throwing this out there from what I know of cold therapy in general. So you may know something more specific about this, but it pushes that cascade of hormonal response. And so especially for older athletes, it seems like that's going to be an even more powerful motivator to be using something like this because I know it takes me longer to recover for sure as I get older.
Yeah.
And like I haven't even trained for an Ironman in a couple of years because a couple of reasons. One is I don't feel like I can really put the proper training I need to get into that. It would just I'd have to build it would be such a slow process. Whereas if I had a faster recovery time, it'd be more reasonable to think that not that I could finish, but that I could actually accomplish something in the race.
Well, that's a really good point. I like what you're saying because that's a common problem that we have as endurance athletes is we put this race out there. Let's say it's a marathon and it's 16 weeks away, and we're going to try to jam in as much training as possible. And we have this training program, and sometimes you look at it and you're like, how am I going to get this done?
Right.
And a lot of times you're just pushing yourself way too hard. And I know personally, a lot of times I fail at what that training program is because I'm just unable to. It's just too much volume.
Right.
I'm not able to recover, and
right.
It's of course it's probably my fault for probably signing up for too big of a race too soon. But that's very common. So this certainly on a practical level, this certainly can help an endurance athlete who's potentially trying to accelerate a training program to get to that Ironman or half Ironman or marathon or half marathon, get them to that point where they're ready to go versus stepping on the line saying I'm undertrained. Well, I feel like I didn't get enough training in, but also I feel like I'm overtrained because I'm not 100% energy.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes that oomph is not there, or you kind of know, like, I'm going to finish. Finishing's not an issue. It's going to be painful, but I'm not feeling like I can really just go out and kill it.
Yep.
So we've talked, in that context, we're talking a little more to the older athletes, but you've also used this with youth athletes, and where does that kind of come in handy for them? Like, what's the difference between, say, a youth and an older athlete in terms of how cryotherapy works?
Yeah, so certainly my older athletes have a stronger need because we just don't recover. I mean, I'm an old athlete, so we don't recover as fast. We want to keep doing, races like we did in our 20s and 30s, but this helps older athletes recover faster. Now, younger athletes, most of my younger athletes are actually less in the endurance world and more in the I got a lot of gymnasts.
Mm-hmm.
So my under 20 type of clients, a lot of them are gymnasts, and gymnasts they just pound their bodies. I mean, it's a tough sport, and there's a lot of pounding, and they have 4 to 6 hour type practices. It's very, very intense training, and most gymnasts are in pain. And a lot of gymnasts are taking painkillers at that age, so it's really not a good thing. So whole body cryotherapy has been very, very effective for those kids. I also have in that age group a few soccer players. There's a lot of kids, especially boys, they go through I don't have the medical term, but the growth plate pain, mostly in the legs, where they're at that stage where their legs are growing. They're also pushing themselves hard in their sport, and they have a lot of pain. So it's helping there as well.
And that's huge because, I mean, we're in Southern California, and the season runs year round. So when is the recovery season for soccer? When is the recovery season for swimming in those? There isn't one. It just keeps going and going and going. So this is something that, and a lot of those athletes, show up in probably in your office and in mine, at least in the clinics, where they're just, they're injured and they're not able to, train and compete like they did before. And also at that age, it seems like time is of the essence because they're growing and because their learning curve is so steep that if they take a season off, the competition could be way ahead of them by the time they get back into training. So, and they're thinking about scholarships, and some of them are thinking about Olympics and, things like that. So this is it seems to me that it's even more critical for the really serious youth athletes, to maintain that, kind of ongoing competitiveness. Whereas for older athletes, it's almost like a turning back the clock, and giving yourself better regenerative powers.
Yep.
So, okay, so a couple more questions. So, there's so many things that are cool about cryotherapy, and we could probably talk all day, but a couple more questions. One is, this is something that, especially endurance athletes and triathletes in particular sometimes stress over is, how, is there a way that I can use cryotherapy to get me down to race weight? And for sure, a cold exposure will stimulate, the production of brown fat and bump up the metabolism and all that. But and I know you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is another one of those things where it just seems to me that it's a no-brainer. Like if you're trying to really, get your metabolism going and if you're having trouble with that cryotherapy, like an added benefit would be stimulation of your metabolism and potential fat burning and changing your changing your ratio of burning fat to carbs and things like that. Is that something that you've looked into at all, or you've discovered or thought about?
Yeah, so I have, and I don't talk about it a lot, only because the definitive study on how whole body cryotherapy affects metabolism hasn't come out. It's in the works. There's a doctor in the U.S. that's doing a blind study specifically on metabolism, the effect of cryotherapy on metabolism. So until I see that, then there'll be specific numbers, how many calories, are being burned based upon using cryotherapy. So the sort of what the industry is talking about is between 400 and 800, which is pretty wide range. But the bottom line is it does stimulate your metabolism to burn more fuel, because your body is fighting that cold, even though it's very brief. So I don't talk about a lot about the losing weight from cryotherapy. It is what I call a side benefit versus a side effect. It also, one of the other side benefits, there's many. Anytime you're increasing circulation, and there's a lot of benefits to your body, but it improves your skin health because it disrupts collagen. It's anything related to again, circulation throughout your body, that improvement, you're gonna health benefits. But what I found personally is that when you're training and you're thinking about race day, and you maybe have a target race weight, what weight do I want to be at on race day? And sometimes it's those last, let's say it's 5 pounds, that sort of are the most difficult to get to lose. What I've noticed is that in my early training, with say a race coming up in the future, that I got down to my race rate really fast. So I definitely noticed a difference in how quickly I was able to, during my regular training, drop. It was sort of without any thought. It was done. So there's definitely a benefit there, and it'll be different from everybody, but that is a side benefit.
Yeah, and it seems to me that again, we do a lot of nutritional and metabolic work in my clinic, and the inflammatory weight is that 5 pounds, and so if you're knocking your inflammation down, bam, like it can happen really quickly if you put the right things in place, and cryotherapy is certainly a powerful anti-inflammatory force. Sorry to touch on this. As far as triathletes and endurance athletes go, a lot of us are out in the elements. If we're going to be riding a bike or running far and things like that, and even if you're wearing sunscreen, there's some cumulative skin damage. But you talked about the benefits of cryotherapy to skin recovery as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And that's another kind of like fringe benefit, right? Or is that something that estheticians should know about too?
Yeah, since I'm not in the skin care business, I don't pay a lot of attention to it. But I do. Clients will tell me, and I've noticed myself. I just noticed my skin's softer. Is that from the water or from the soap or something? But no, it definitely improves skin health. And some people will notice. Let's say they had a brown spot on their face that's been there for a while, and suddenly that's sort of disappearing. It can be it can be temporary. I've noticed if I stop doing cryotherapy, something might sort of come back. So it's not permanent, but it's definitely improving the health of your skin. So it's not a big focus for most athletes. If you went out and got a sunburn, this would definitely help heal sunburn faster. But it's just one of those sort of side things that's skin improvement. And they do use this cold air cryotherapy as some clinics use it as a facial. They'll blow the cold air on the face specifically. So that's something that is Not offered by me, but it is offered by different clinics.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I just threw that in there because, again, like, as an aging athlete, the more you're in the sun, the more you kind of notice, like, yeah, I'm getting more, my skin's kind of dry, especially if you're in and out of the pool a lot. The chlorine dries you out, and then you're in the sun unless you're constantly putting lotion on, which, it's kind of, I don't know, cumbersome, especially if you're, sweating, doing all that. A little side benefit, kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure we could kind of talk all day on this, but so how are you working with folks now? Is it pretty much one-on-one? Do you have like, do you have days where, say like, running or a triathlon team or something can come in, or is it, do you have open houses? Like, what's a good way for people to kind of discover what you do and maybe try it out?
Yeah, so there's several ways. About once a quarter, I'll have an open house on a Saturday or Sunday, and invite people that have never come and tried cryotherapy just to come in. And I'll let them try it for free. So there's a sort of a special day I do maybe once a quarter. I just did one a few weeks ago. I also will invite teams in to I'll invite groups or teams to come in, and as this sometimes having your peers there will make you feel less nervous about trying it the first time. So I'll do that as well. It's the key for cryotherapy is that it has to be convenient, because it's very quick. People come in and out in 15 minutes. So I'm conveniently located. My office right off the 55 freeway in Costa Mesa, so it's really convenient from almost any major freeway in Orange County. And then I basically a lot of times if someone's interested, I'll say, hey, just come on in. I'll show it to you, and I'll spend a half hour with you and let you experience it and get an idea of what it does and whether or not it's something you'd want to continue doing. And so I'm basically, like you said in the beginning, I've brought this to Orange County, and I want to introduce it to as many people as possible. So I'm really trying to spread the word on it. I believe it's a really effective treatment for athletes for recovery, and there's not many things more important than recovery. So I basically have an open door where people can, if they contact me, they can come in and check it out.
For sure. And the other thing I just wanted to point out is that for folks who are hearing about this for the first time is that it's not like a random thing. Dan has kind of a protocol, and there's an organization and a process, at least in the beginning, I think, to get it working. Maybe you can take a second to kind of just talk about that, and then why that is and all that. Yeah.
So that's a really important point to make here is that cryotherapy it's not effective if you just come and do it once. It's not a one and done like a lot of treatments or any type of exercise. You have to do it a few times. So, but the protocol is generally, in order to see whether it's having a positive effect for you for whatever you're addressing, you want to try to stack a series or group of treatments together in pretty close proximity. So my typical recommendation is look at 2 weeks, and we'll try to do 6 of them in 2 weeks. So maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that way we're stacking the treatments close together so that there's a cumulative effect. So that as your body's adding these anti-inflammatories in the bloodstream from the first time, well, the second time's adding to that first time, and the third time's adding to that first and second. So you're building up those anti-inflammatory properties in your bloodstream, over these 6 sessions. And usually by 6 sessions, you really start to notice, okay, I'm feeling pretty darn good in my workouts, and I'm feeling like I'm starting to recover. May take only just 2 or 3, but usually I say let's try to do 6, and we'll give it we'll hit it hard and give it sort of an honest evaluation after those 6. So what you've done now is after 6 sessions, you've sort of created a base of anti-inflammatory properties. And then after that, either the person goes into sort of a maintenance, or they sort of continue on that same. Maybe they do another 6, or maybe they start doing maybe once a week or twice a week, and they go into sort of a maintenance mode. So that's basically how it's used. And I mean, what's also more real effective is that, let's say you have a race day and planned out, and you're like, okay, I get this marathon in 12 weeks. And we plan out cryotherapy. We're strategic about when we do it. Maybe go heavier during the heavier training weeks, and then we taper towards the end. So we try to be sort of strategic with the treatments.
Awesome, yeah. And I just a little plug from my end is it was, I think, about my 6th treatment that and honestly, I wasn't really good about getting in 2 weeks. Mine were spread out more. But about my 6th treatment, I think I sent you a text afterwards, and I had a bike workout right afterwards, and I just felt like I just had another gear than I usually have in that bike workout, and I was able to just train much harder. My power numbers were up significantly, and it felt less effortful to me.
Yeah.
So, whether that was an emotional thing or whatever, I chalked it up to cryotherapy because it was about the right interval, and it made a difference. So, for absolute sure. So,
well, I'll tell you something.
Sure.
There's a psychological aspect to this too, because I've noticed in my workouts, you reach a point in a workout. It could be a swim or run on a bike where you're mentally you give up a little bit. Where you're like, you know what? I don't have another. That's all I got. And you'll let up a little bit, and in a way you're surrendering a little bit on that workout. What I found as I do cryotherapy is a lot of times also when you're in that point in the workout when you're pushing yourself a little bit, you're like, okay, where's the edge here? And what I found is I'm like, wow, like you said, I have another gear here, and it's you get this mental confidence where you're like, wow, I could push harder here. I'm keeping up with what I'm supposed to be doing, but I have more here. I could definitely go harder. And so I mean that to have that in your back pocket, especially in a race, is pretty invaluable. So that's what I found is that when you just feel that good and you feel like you're recovered, your confidence really gets pretty high.
Right, yeah, that's huge. And sorry, one more experiential plug. And this is just N=1 my experience, but recently I raced the Oceanside Ironman 70.3, and typically in the last quarter of the bike course, I'm really pushing it and feeling the pain. But on this course, I actually the last quarter of the course is where I really killed it, and I went much faster than I typically would have, and went into the run feeling so much stronger. So whether that's cryotherapy, it certainly wasn't training because I would say I was undertrained for that race. Whether it was mental, whether it was the course, so many variables, but definite possibility. And I followed protocol to go up to that race, getting a session just before the race and all that. So anyway. Another little experiential N=1 plug, but for those of you guys out there, try it out, check it out. Dan is at polarcryotherapy.com, and we're gonna put those links out also with the interview. So check him out, go and visit him, call him up, ask him questions. I mean, really, we're very lucky that he's stuck his neck out there really and brought this out to people. Because otherwise you'd have to drive all the way up to LA if you're in Orange County, or if you're in another part of the country, you're just out of luck. So thanks so much for being here today, Dan. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us, and hopefully we'll have some updates as we go on.
Great, thanks, Manny.
Sure thing. So everybody, thanks again for taking the time to listen today. And this is Manny Aragon from the Walsh Workshop Center for Structural Performance signing out for this episode of the 2014 Endurance Summit. All the best.